Today we've got a packed lineup of topics you won't want to miss. Today's news might be the most shocking thing we've seen all year. Like we're talking, no way this is real kind of news. Yeah, some of the leaks were floating around already, but this one, I honestly didn't even bother reporting on it because it sounded so ridiculous. I was like, nah, there's no way. But here we are. There's a bunch of big leaks and stories this week, and I've got all of them right here. So grab some snacks, kick back. Oh, and if you hit that like button, it'd seriously help. Not just me, but the algorithm gods who decide which gaming news gets seen and which doesn't. So, Microsoft might have just quietly revealed that Steam is coming to Xbox. Not through a formal announcement, not at a flashy showcase, just an image in a blog post that they quickly took down. The image in question, a UI mock-up showcasing Xbox's vision of its ecosystem across devices. Pretty standard stuff until you notice something strange. Right there in the console interface, among tabs like Game Pass and Installed, sits one clearly labeled Steam. It was subtle, but unmistakable. And then, poof, gone. The image was pulled from the post with no comment. Let's talk about what this actually implies. Beyond the obvious headline buzz, Microsoft's bigger vision. The blog post, penned by Xbox VP Leo Olebe, is all about expanding Xbox to every device possible. It leans heavily into their usual messaging, breaking down barriers, reaching a billion players, letting people play how and where they want. None of that is new. Microsoft's been moving in this direction for years. Game Pass on cloud, PC, console parity, cross-platform everything. But integrating Steam directly into the Xbox UI is a notable escalation. It suggests not just convenience, but an official pipeline between Xbox hardware and third-party PC storefronts. On the surface, that seems like a win for player freedom. But there are some big questions here. Is this actually feasible? Technically, running Steam games on an Xbox Series wouldn't be impossible. The hardware is capable, and Xbox has been inching closer to full PC functionality. But there are serious challenges. Licensing and platform compatibility. Most Steam games are built for Windows, not the Xbox OS. Unless Microsoft is planning some kind of virtualized Windows layer or full cloud streaming, native support would be extremely limited. Input and performance. Steam's PC library is massive, but not everything is designed for console-style play. How would Xbox handle compatibility, updates, modding, or even basic controller mapping? Developer pushback. Would third-party devs be okay with Xbox integrating Steam access into their ecosystem without requiring players to repurchase titles on Microsoft's store? At best, this is a complex technical and business challenge. At worst, it's just marketing fluff, a symbol of where they'd like to go, not something remotely close to shipping. So what's really going on? Most likely, this was a preview of intent. Microsoft has been increasingly open about its platform becoming a service, not just a box. Game Pass is already on PC and cloud. They've brought Xbox games to rival platforms. This could be a next step, turning Xbox consoles into cross-platform hubs. And that tracks with a recent report from The Verge, which claims Microsoft is working on an app update that shows your full PC library, including Steam and Epic titles on Xbox. Not necessarily to play them, but to unify your gaming footprint across platforms. That's less flashy than Steam is coming to Xbox, but it's more realistic and more useful for Microsoft's long-term play. So, the PS5 still absolutely crushing it. New data just dropped, and it turns out the PS5 is actually selling faster in the US than the PS4 did, by about 7% over the same time frame. That's wild, considering how popular the PS4 was back in the day. And get this, Sony just had their best quarter ever for PlayStation hardware, shipping nearly 10 million units at the end of 2024. No wonder the PS5's dominating. But here's the surprise twist. Xbox Series X and S are lagging behind. Like, really lagging. According to Circa analyst Matt Piscatella, the Series X and S are currently 19% behind where the Xbox One was at this point in its life cycle. That's not great. Now, we don't have hard answers on why Xbox is slipping, but it probably has something to do with Microsoft's heavy push into PC and Game Pass. I mean, if you can play most of their stuff on PC anyway, why drop hundreds on a console? Also, worth noting, the PlayStation Portal, yeah, that handheld thing, it was the best-selling gaming accessory in February 2025. Again, Sony's killing it across the board. Even the Midnight Black version of the Portal and the Dualsense Edge controller made the top 5 in accessory sales. So yeah, PlayStation is on fire, Xbox is in a weird spot, and handhelds might be having a bigger comeback than anyone expected. Real question is, if Xbox keeps trailing this hard, does Microsoft double down on Game Pass and PC? Or do they try something bold on the hardware front? Let me know what you think. At GDC, a senior consultant named Ben Foster had a pretty bold take. He said a GTA 6 delay could literally take out other companies, not just a bump in the road. Game over. If your studio is timing your launch around GTA 6 and Rockstar suddenly delays by 6 months, now what? Either you launch into that unexpected gap or you stretch your budget and try to survive longer. Not everyone has the money for that. It could crush smaller teams. It sounds dramatic, but honestly, not unrealistic. That's the kind of weight GTA 6 carries. And then there's the Horizon situation. Every time Guerrilla releases a new Horizon game, it ends up launching next to a cultural juggernaut. First one dropped right next to Breath of the Wild. Second one, Elden Ring. Now they're working on Horizon Online, and it's supposed to come out late this year or early next. So yeah, probably within a week of GTA 6. Again, it's almost impressive how consistent they are with this. Wait, one of the comments even joked they're betting their entire net worth that GTA 6 releases right next to Horizon multiplayer. And honestly, that bet might hit. People are already planning time off for it. Someone said they've got PTO banked just for that week. And yeah, I think we're going to see a measurable drop in productivity worldwide. Energy usage will spike, downloads will clog the internet, and young dudes everywhere will be MIA from school and work. GTA 6 is going to take over the world for a week or two, maybe more. Everything still points to October. And Foster's comments hit harder when you realize how many publishers are quietly reshuffling things behind the scenes to avoid getting crushed by it. If Rockstar delays the game, it opens a huge gap in the fall release calendar, and someone will jump in. The only question is, are they ready? That said, Foster also made it clear, GTA 6 isn't going to magically fix the whole industry. It'll get investors excited again, sure. It'll get headlines, but it's not going to save every studio or lift every project. Now, some games can survive in GTA 6's shadow. Stuff like remakes, remasters, or PC ports. Those are safer. Like if The Last of Us Part 2 PC version launches around the same time, it's fine. The people who want it will buy it, regardless. Same for something like a Black Flag remake. It's got nostalgia. It's not competing for the same audience. But if you're dropping a brand new AAA game, that's dangerous. Games like Fable, Fair Games, or Horizon 3, you do not want to be anywhere near that release window. Same goes for live service games, especially if GTA Online is coming alongside the story mode. Now, if Nintendo decides to drop a new Mario this fall, that could work. The overlap between hardcore Mario fans and GTA players isn't huge. So yeah, Mario could survive it. But in general, studios are going to give Rockstar a wide berth, probably at least a 3-week bubble before and after launch. Because GTA 6 won't be a one-weekend thing. Just like Red Dead 2, this will be a massive game. Most players will need a week or more just to finish the main story. So anything launching close to it risks getting completely overshadowed. And if GTA 6 gets delayed, that bubble just floats further down the calendar, creates this massive gap everyone was saving, and now it's empty. Could be a great opportunity if someone has a finished, polished game ready to go. Big if. As for the game itself, even if it's mid, it's still going to make a ridiculous amount of money. Honestly, gamers might even love a bad release more than a good one. The memes, the outrage, the hot takes, it fuels the conversation. But Rockstar, they usually stick the landing. People thought Red Dead 2 couldn't live up to the hype, and then it did. So yeah, I'd bet that GTA 6 pulls it off. But we won't know until it's in our hands. And right now we still don't know when that'll be. People keep asking if the $100 price tag is confirmed. It's not. Nothing official yet. But here's my guess. Rockstar drops a $70 or maybe $80 standard version, and then a $100 deluxe edition with early access. Maybe a week early, maybe digital only for the first stretch, just to avoid leaks like what happened with AC Shadows. I wouldn't be surprised if physical copies just come with a code inside the case, Fallout 76 style. Here's your cardboard box and a slip of paper. Enjoy. Rockstar knows people will buy it no matter what, and if they time it right, they can sell it twice. Console first, then 6 months later, a shiny PC version with extra features. People will absolutely double dip. So, we might be getting a new God of War game this year. Yeah, seriously, not a remaster, not a trilogy re-release. An actual new game, just not a full-blown sequel. Here's what's going around. Insiders like Tom Henderson and Jeff Grubb are both saying there's a smaller God of War project in the works for 2025. And not the usual, it's just a collection stuff. Grubb says it's a brand new side story, something people are calling an expand-alone. Think Miles Morales or Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. Shorter, more focused, but still legit. And here's the cool part. It's supposedly set during Kratos' younger days in Greece. So, yeah, we're talking young angry Kratos doing his classic god-smashing thing. Sony's been leaning into these bite-sized spin-offs lately to fill the gap between big releases. And honestly, not a bad move. If this ends up being real, it could be a perfect way to hold us over until the next major God of War game drops. That said, take it with a grain of salt for now. It's all still rumor territory. But if we are getting more Kratos this year, I'm all in. Looks like Sony's quietly cooking up something new. They've got a brand new first-party studio called Dark Outlaw Games. Yeah, no flashy trailer, no PlayStation blog post, just quietly building behind the scenes. The news came out during a podcast with Jeff Gersman, where Jason Blundell, the Call of Duty Zombies guy, casually dropped that he's heading up the studio. He helped create Zombies mode and directed stuff like the career and Zombies content in Black Ops 4. After leaving Treyarch, he started Deviation Games, but that didn't last long. He dipped out in 2022, and the studio shut down not long after. Now, he's leading Dark Outlaw under Sony's umbrella. According to Blundell, they've been working away in the shadows for a while, and will step out into the light once they've got something real to show. So, yeah, the studio exists. It's just not quite ready for the spotlight. No word yet on what kind of game they're making, or even if development has officially started, but Blundell says they're still in that early phase of staffing up, getting the right team together, bouncing around ideas, and seeing what sticks. The studio was founded in 2024, based in Los Angeles, and right now it's a small crew, somewhere between 11 and 50 people, according to their LinkedIn. With Blundell at the helm, it's a safe bet whatever they're working on is gonna have some strong shooter DNA. Zombies, science fiction, totally new IP, who knows, but it's one to watch. All right, 90s kids, the Birdman is back, and this time, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 is getting the next-gen treatment. If you grew up playing these games, you already know. This isn't just a remake, it's a full-on nostalgia trip on 4 wheels. Coming July 11th to PS5 and PS4, this remake is bringing back all the legendary parks, tricks, and music. But it's not just a visual upgrade. They've rebuilt everything from the ground up, added new skaters, fresh levels, enhanced customization, and even a brand new New Game Plus mode. And yeah, online multiplayer with crossplay is in, so you can shred with up to 8 players, whether you're battling for the best score or just chilling in free skate. One of the coolest new additions? The water park level, an abandoned, graffiti-covered theme park in the Mojave Desert where you can grind down rusted-out water slides and carve through an empty lazy river. It's the kind of setting that would have been in the OG games if tech allowed for it. They've also expanded the custom skater options, added new tricks, and yes, the soundtrack is getting both classic bangers bangers and fresh tracks. If you're feeling rusty, Tony himself is back in the tutorial mode to walk you through ollies, kickflips, grinds, and all the tricks you need to start chaining massive combos again. If you pre-order, you get access to the Foundry demo in June, which lets you skate 2 parks with a selection of songs from the soundtrack. And if you grab the Digital Deluxe Edition, you get early access 3 days before launch, plus some ridiculous extras like Doomslayer and Revenant as playable skaters, complete with special tricks that are probably as insane as they sound. Oh, and for the hardcore collectors, there's a limited edition physical skateboard deck in the Collector's Edition, featuring a reissued birdhouse wings graphic and a printed Tony Hawk autograph. So are you strapping on the knee pads and diving back in? Or are you worried it might not live up to the nostalgia? All right, this one's interesting. People Can Fly is officially making a game for Sony, based on one of Sony's own IPs. But here's the catch. We have no idea what it is yet. They're calling it Project Delta for now, and from what we know, this is a typical work-for-hire deal, meaning Sony is still the one calling the shots, while People Can Fly handles the actual development. If you're not familiar with them, these are the guys behind Painkiller, Bulletstorm, Gears of War, Judgment, and Outriders. So their specialty is fast, intense shooters. That probably gives us a good idea of the kind of game we're looking at here. Now, what Sony franchise could this be? The most obvious guess is Resistance, Sony's long-dormant FPS series that a lot of people have been hoping would make a comeback. But it could also be something like Killzone, though that one feels less likely. Or maybe even a brand new IP entirely. Sony doesn't really have a strong first-party shooter franchise anymore, especially with Bungie seemingly struggling post-Destiny 2, so this move makes sense. For now, they're just building a prototype, so we're not going to see anything from this for a long while. But the fact that Sony is working with an outside studio on a shooter could mean they're actually looking to fill that big gap in their lineup. So what do you think? Is this finally the return of Resistance? Or is Sony cooking up something completely new? Alright, let's talk about these next-gen Xbox rumors, because things are getting really interesting. So, for the past few weeks, there's been a lot of speculation about when the next Xbox is coming and what it's actually going to be. Originally, there were reports that a new Xbox could launch as early as 2026, with dev kits supposedly being used to develop Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4. But now, insider Jez Corden from Windows Central is saying that's not the case. Instead, the timeline looks much more like 2027, which would put it right in line with when we're expecting the PlayStation 6 to drop. And here's the wild part. This next Xbox, it's going to be even more PC-like than ever before. Microsoft is reportedly moving away from the traditional locked-down console structure and leaning even harder into the Windows ecosystem. That means instead of a custom-built console like we're used to, this next-gen Xbox could be designed more like a high-end gaming PC in a console-friendly shell. It'll still have specific hardware and optimizations, but in theory, it could be running off-the-shelf PC parts rather than fully custom chips. On top of that, Microsoft is also doubling down on handheld gaming. A separate report says they're working with a PC gaming manufacturer, think Lenovo, Razer, or Asus, on a Windows-based Xbox handheld, and it could launch as early as late 2025. Unlike the Steam Deck or Asus ROG Ally, this wouldn't just be a general PC handheld. It would be Xbox branded, with full Game Pass support, Microsoft Store integration, and native Xbox UI elements. But since it's still running Windows, you could, in theory, install Steam, Epic Games Store, and even PlayStation-published games that are available on PC. Which brings up a really interesting question. What happens if Sony games start running natively on an Xbox handheld? Sony has been pushing more of its exclusives onto PC, and if this new handheld is just a Windows machine in an Xbox shell, then suddenly you could be playing Spider-Man or The Last of Us on an Xbox device. That would be awkward, to say the least. Would Sony even try to block it? Could they? All of this points to something we've been seeing for a while now. Microsoft is shifting away from the traditional console business. They've already been putting their games on PlayStation, their hardware sales are down quarter after quarter, and they're clearly not trying to go head-to-head with Sony anymore. Instead of selling a box and locking players into an ecosystem, they're expanding Xbox as a platform through Game Pass, cloud gaming, and now possibly an entire line of PC-based devices. Sony Sony, on the other hand, seems to be sticking to the traditional console model. They're still treating PlayStation as a closed ecosystem where exclusives drive hardware sales. And with the PS6 expected in 2027, it looks like Sony is preparing for another traditional console cycle, while Microsoft is just doing something completely different. So now, the big question is Microsoft still truly committed to the console space, or are they slowly phasing out traditional Xbox hardware altogether? And if the next Xbox is basically a PC, does that make Sony's approach feel outdated, or does it actually put PlayStation in an even stronger position? So this story kinda hit me out of nowhere. I don't think anybody saw this coming, and honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, because if it's true, it's kinda huge. Apparently, Naughty Dog has been working on an unannounced game for 3 years. 3 years. And it's not a remake. It's not a remaster. It's not some patch or DLC. It's a brand new IP. And here's where it gets interesting. This mystery project is allegedly being directed by Sean Escaig. Now, if you're not familiar with that name, Sean Escaig is one of Naughty Dog's heavy hitters. He directed Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, which was kind of an experiment for Naughty Dog at the time. It was smaller in scale, but still had that big Uncharted feel. And it was really well received. People loved it. So the fact that he's heading up this new project, that's intriguing. But it's also weird because Naughty Dog hasn't said a word about this thing. Like, not even a tease. And this is Naughty Dog we're talking about. One of the biggest, most high-profile studios in the industry. If they're working on something, they usually make a big deal about it. So here's where the story gets messy. This leak, if you want to call it that, came from Daniel RPK. Now, if you're not knee-deep in the world of leakers and industry insiders, Daniel RPK is one of those guys who always has something to say. Some of it turns out to be true, some of it doesn't. But he's definitely got connections. He posted this report on Patreon, behind a paywall, which, you know, already feels a little suspect. But it eventually made its way to the Game Post and a bunch of other places online. And what he's claiming is that Naughty Dog is working on a second project. Not The Last of Us Part 3, not some remake, but something else. And it's been in development for over 3 years. And yeah, Neil Druckmann did say after The Last of Us Part 2 that making another game in that series would need the stars to align. So sure, The Last of Us Part 3 could happen someday. But Naughty Dog's not waiting around for the stars to align. They're clearly doing something else right now. But here's the thing. This whole story is built off one guy's post on Patreon. There's no official announcement, no details, just speculation. But once you plant that idea, people start connecting dots whether they're there or not. Now, what makes this even weirder is the stuff we're hearing about an Uncharted spin-off featuring Cassie Drake, Nathan Drake's daughter. You remember her, right? She shows up at the very end of Uncharted 4. It's like this perfect feel-good wrap-up to the series. You get the sense that, yeah, maybe there's more story to tell, but also maybe not. But here's the wild part. Cassie was played by Caitlin Dever in Uncharted 4, and she's now playing Abby in the HBO Last of Us series. So this whole Naughty Dog universe is starting to feel weirdly interconnected, and that's either really cool or kinda concerning. But let's break this down. Naughty Dog has been crystal clear in the past about Uncharted. They've said it more than once. They're done. They moved on. But here we are, years later, and the rumor mill is grinding away. And then you've got the Jack and Daxter crowd. And look, I get it. People loved those games. But Naughty Dog's not the same studio it was back in the early 2000s. Their entire identity has shifted. They went from colorful, wacky platformers to dark, gritty, hyper-realistic storytelling. And they're really good at it. So the idea that Naughty Dog is just going to drop everything and go back to making Jack and Daxter, that feels like pure fantasy. But hey, crazier things have happened. Now, if I had to put my money on what Naughty Dog is doing, I'd say it's The Last of Us related. Think about it. That's their crown jewel right now. The HBO show is a massive hit. The games are cultural phenomena. So what do you do next? You double down. Maybe it's a prequel. Maybe it's something following Joel and Tommy during that 20-year gap we barely know anything about. Think about it. Joel loses Sarah, and then 20 years later, he meets Ellie. That's a huge chunk of story just begging to be be told. And they could even structure it like The Last of Us Part 2 with those time jumps. Or even go episodic with it. Like, show Joel and Tommy at their lowest points, their most desperate moments, and how they eventually went their separate ways. That's pure gold for storytelling. But here's the thing, even if they did that, they could still screw it up. Because you know how it goes, fans have their own expectations, and if Naughty Dog doesn't deliver on those expectations, people will riot. Now, on the Uncharted side, I think a Cassie Drake spin-off could totally work. People love that Indiana Jones, treasure hunting, swashbuckling vibe. It's timeless. And if they do it right, it could be amazing. Maybe they go the Lost Legacy route again, smaller scale, more focused, but still with all that bombastic action and intricate storytelling. But here's where it gets tricky. What does Sony actually have to lose by making this thing multi-platform? Like releasing on Xbox or PC? Probably nothing aside from pissing off hardcore PlayStation fans. But here's the kicker. Developing for Xbox, especially the Series S, is a pain. That thing's way less powerful than the PS5, so it's just not worth the hassle. If you want PlayStation exclusives, you probably already own a PlayStation. And Sony knows that. They're not sweating it. So, bottom line, what's Naughty Dog working on? Could be The Last of Us, could be Uncharted, could be something completely new. But here's the thing, it's Naughty Dog. Whatever it is, it's probably going to be good. But the fact that they're keeping it this quiet, that's what makes me curious. And if it really is a new IP, that could be huge. But hey, what do you guys think? Is Naughty Dog going back to Uncharted? Are they building out the Last of Us universe? Or are they just throwing us a curveball and working on something completely out of left field? Let me know. Here's something pretty big. User research workers at Activision just voted to unionize. Yeah, you heard that right. Unionize. And not just a small handful of them either. We're talking a super majority. Now, this vote happened under the Communications Workers of America, CWA for short. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because they've been a huge player in organizing tech and gaming industry workers over the past few years. And here's the kicker. Microsoft actually recognized the union, like, officially. So let's zoom out for a second because this is actually pretty historic. What we're seeing here is the first group of video game user researchers to unionize. And they're not just organizing in some vacuum. They're joining over 2,000 workers at other Microsoft-owned studios under a neutrality agreement between Microsoft and the CWA, which, by the way, is wild when you consider that not that long ago, unions in the gaming industry were basically unheard of. And now, suddenly, you've got all these groups organizing under the same banner. It's like watching a shift happen in real time. Now, the user research workers at Activision are calling themselves the Activision User Research Union, CWA. And this whole thing was sparked by the layoffs that went down in 2023 and 2024. A lot of these workers were just like, okay, something's got to change. And now they're building what they hope will be a safety net. One of the organizing committee members, Nicholas van Meerten, who's a quantitative user researcher, put it like this: "We are excited to join our fellow game makers across the video game industry to show what's possible when workers can freely build solidarity in the workplace." And if you're paying attention, that word, solidarity, that's the key here. The workers are basically saying, hey, we're tired of getting jerked around by layoffs and job insecurity, and we want a say in how things are run. They want things like higher wages, job security, transparency around promotions. Basically the same stuff any union fights for. And let's be real, the games industry has been notorious for just chewing people up and spitting them out. Crunch culture, layoffs, exploitation. It's a mess. Now, this unionization effort didn't just come out of nowhere. It's part of a broader wave of labor organizing across the entire industry. And it's not just QA testers or developers, it's researchers. It's people who focus on understanding how games are played, what players want, what they're frustrated by. User researchers are basically the bridge between the people making the games and the people playing them. And if you've been paying attention, this kind of organizing is happening everywhere. It's like workers in the gaming industry are finally saying, enough. And that's important because this industry has a terrible track record when it comes to worker treatment. Now, you can't talk about Activision without talking about the elephant in the room, Bobby Kotick. Last month, the CWA straight up slammed him for saying that all those harassment reports under his leadership were fake. Yeah, fake. This guy was basically calling everyone a liar. So when these workers are organizing for things like transparency and accountability, you can kind of of see why. Maurice Washington, the president of CWA Local 9400, made it pretty clear. He said, "It is critical that workers have a protected voice on the job to ensure they receive their fair share." And he straight up welcomed these workers to the CWA, saying they're ready to meet Microsoft at the bargaining table to secure a fair union contract. And that's where this gets interesting. Because while Activision Blizzard has been a mess with all the harassment reports, layoffs, and just general chaos, Microsoft has been playing the good guy lately. They've recognized multiple unions without much of a fight. They've signed neutrality agreements. It's almost like they're trying to be the anti-Activision. But here's the real question. Will this work? Will this actually make a difference for these user researchers at Activision? Because forming a union is just step one. Now they have to negotiate a contract. They have to get real concrete changes on paper. And that's where things tend to get messy. But the fact that we're even here talking about unionization at a major studio like Activision is kind of wild. Because this industry, it's built on exploitation. It's built on overworking people, underpaying them, and then tossing them out when it's convenient. So, I see a lot of video titles along the lines of PS5 games coming to Xbox because of Steam, or Microsoft's clever move on porting PS5 games to Xbox and Xbox handhelds. And I just want to remind everyone to chill the fuck out. I have a business background, and I'm telling you, this is not how business works. First of all, Asus is teasing a new handheld, and Xbox is hyping it as an Xbox handheld that will supposedly run a Steam app or Steam OS or something, right? I think you've all heard the news by now. So, let me make it clear. Xbox is dead. The handheld device will be Windows-based. The next Xbox will be a light version of Windows 11 or 12 or whatever it ends up being. Not only that, but it's also rumored that the next Xbox consoles, or whatever they'll be called, are going to be licensed out to companies like Asus, Lenovo, and other manufacturers to make their own versions of Xbox. Secondly, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, forget about ever getting a God of War, Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us, or any big, huge blockbuster game on PC day one. That's never going to happen. So, people can make their videos and flashy titles about all PS5 games coming to Xbox, but that's misleading to the highest degree. Not only that, but I want you to look at Sony's PS5 Pro price right now and Nintendo's pricing strategy. Why are they becoming more expensive? Well, that's because there's zero competition in the console market right now. Sony is dominating the blockbuster games. They pivoted back to action-packed, mind-blowing single-player games. And Nintendo has their own niche, with Zelda and Switch 2 gimmicks. If you're betting on Xbox riding high, you're not going to be a happy gamer. In my opinion, you have three options from 2025 to 2027. 1. PlayStation. Second, gaming PCs starting with 4080 GPUs. Third, Nintendo for the uniqueness and very special first-party games. Xbox, on the other hand, is the last console you should be thinking about investing in. Even ex-Xbox fans will tell you to stop. 90% of Xbox fans left that brand entirely during the Xbox One era. So, when I hear or see a video title like Xbox blah blah blah, I just roll my eyes. Because if Xbox had any good value, I would have bought an Xbox alongside my PlayStation years ago. Microsoft doesn't really care that much about dominating the gaming console market. They've just been losing money with Xbox ever since its inception. They admitted this themselves. So, they made the Xbox is Everything campaign and bought all those studios. They want to be the next Netflix of gaming and put all their IPs on everything. Sony, on the other hand, knows the monopoly it has right now. They will keep porting some games to PC, but they will never do it on day one. I'm saying this not as a Sony fanboy. I'm saying this from a business perspective. And I'll buy a Nintendo Switch 2 tomorrow if they have at least 3 games I'm dying to play that I can only get there. Heck, I'll even buy an Xbox if they come out with some bangers and they say, only on Xbox forever. But that's not happening anytime soon, right? So, Hideo Kojima is back at it again, pushing the boundaries of whatever the hell reality even is in Death Stranding 2. And if you thought the first game was weird, like baby in a jar, ghosts dragging you into oil oil puddles weird? Apparently, we haven't seen anything yet. At SXSW, Kojima straight up warned players that Troy Baker's Higgs is on a whole new level of absurdity. He said, "Higgs is not like twice or thrice better, it's 100 times better than DS1. And then he basically told fans they're gonna be so confused by the character that they'll want to throw their controller. I'll apologize beforehand. And Baker, he just smirked and said, mission accomplished if you do. Now, we don't see a ton of Higgs in the latest trailer, but there's a moment, a tentacle, like actual tentacle, comes out of his mouth and lunges at Norman Reedus' character, Sam, which is already peak Kojima. But then you remember last year's trailer, where Higgs was wielding an electric guitar that also shoots lightning. And yeah, this is clearly going to be next level unhinged. And here's the thing, Kojima almost killed off Higgs in the first game, but apparently he was just too popular. Kojima said, Higgs was so popular last time I thought I can't kill him. So he's coming back, apparently. But Higgs is not a normal villain, he's a loved character. So instead of just bringing him back the way he was, Kojima decided to turn things way up. Oh, and why is Higgs suddenly all musical? Apparently, Kojima was watching Troy Baker's Instagram posts during the pandemic, where he was playing guitar and singing, and thought, yeah, let's give Higgs a rock star arc, which, in hindsight, makes the lightning guitar gun make way more sense. And then there's Baker himself, talking about how completely insane the world of Death Stranding is. He literally pointed at Kojima and said, it's a mind-blowing world with mind-blowing characters, and all we have to do is just play it beat to beat and scene to scene. So yeah, Kojima is fully embracing the weird this time. But the question is, how far can he go before it just completely loses people? Or is that the point? Everything about this sequel looks bigger and better. I can't say anything for certain, but it definitely seems like they're leaning way harder into action. The first game was, what, 80% quiet walking, 20% action? That ratio looks completely flipped here. Multiple moments in the trailer show combat against humans and BTs, which look even more grotesque this time around. And there are these man-made BTs now, machine BTs or something. I have no idea what's going on, but it looks incredible. The first Death Stranding was divisive, especially at launch, mostly because people just didn't know what to make of it. It was a game about delivering packages across difficult terrain, and that's what you spent most of your time doing. It wasn't an open-world stealth game, even if it had little bits of MGS-V's DNA in there. It was a brilliantly designed walking simulator, groundbreaking in its own way, but not what people expected from Kojima. This time, it feels like he's leaning into what people actually wanted from Death Stranding. There are actual enemy bases, patrols, vehicles. Yes, those existed in the first game, but the enemies in this one feel more like real factions with actual motivations, not just random cargo thieves. It looks and feels like a proper successor to Metal Gear. And then there's the story, which is just as bizarre as ever. We've got a mysterious armored samurai character, a literal doll man who I cannot believe is real, and more human allies this time around. The gameplay still looks mission-based, probably still centered around deliveries, but the moment-to-moment gameplay seems way more about stealth and infiltration. If the first game was about connections, this one seems like it's taking the opposite direction. Are we still expanding a network, building roads and zip lines, making the world more livable? Or is the game shifting away from that entirely? I don't know, but if that system is gone, it would be a little disappointing. There was something so satisfying about transforming a barren, hostile world into something easier to traverse. The environments also look way more built up this time. Jungles, deserts, snowy mountains, you name it. And some of the most intriguing parts of the trailer show the environment changing in real time. Water draining into a lake, a wildfire spreading through trees, roads, cars, electrical wires, and a massive electrical storm in the distance. It feels like the world is more dynamic, like things can shift and evolve based on what's happening in the game. And let's talk about the moment where we see a river forming right in front of us. At first, it doesn't seem like much, but the way the water spreads out makes it look like this is a new river, like this wasn't here before. Is this part of the game's mechanics? Can we trigger environmental changes? Is this a natural event or something we can influence? I have no idea, but it's fascinating. Tides of Annihilation, and what you're seeing right now, captured on a PS5 Pro, is a mix of cinematics and gameplay that is just absurdly good-looking. Like, my brain physically struggles to process how this is real. Now, the studio behind this, Eclipse Glow Games. Never heard Heard of them? Yeah, same. Turns out they're brand new. But here's the kicker. They've got that 10-cent money backing them. And the dev team, it's stacked with industry veterans, many of them from Ubisoft, which, if I had to guess, probably means this is an offshoot of Ubisoft Shanghai or something along those lines. And here's the thing. This is yet another massive game coming out of China that makes a lot of Western studios look like they're just not even trying. The tech, the visuals, the sheer ambition of it, it's on another level. Now, we've seen this kind of thing before. Game comes out, looks mind-blowingly good, and then, well, reality hits. So the rule of thumb here is cautious optimism. But, and this is a big but, what they did next really stood out. Instead of just dropping a cinematic-heavy trailer and calling it a day, they pulled a Crimson Desert move and showed off actual gameplay. And not just quick cuts, like straight-up raw footage, menu screens and all, which suggests they've already got a working demo. And then there's the gameplay itself. It's got that near and stellar blade energy, fast, fluid combat with this almost glowing sense of style. And the animation work? Insane. Claw physics? Booyah. Even the summons look crazy. But the real test is always performance. Because when something looks this good, the question is, what's the catch? Now, if I had to guess, I'd say there's some dynamic resolution scaling happening. The cutscenes are crisp, but when things get chaotic, tons of particles, reflections, fast movement, you start to see a drop in sharpness. And that could mean one of two things. Either YouTube's compression is messing with it, or the game is quietly lowering resolution mid-fight to maintain frame rates. Which, to be fair, is pretty common. But the bigger picture here, this is exactly why competition is so good for gaming. Because when studios put out stuff like this, it forces the rest of the industry to step up. Like, you hear companies say, oh, we just couldn't push NPC fidelity any further because of hardware limitations. And then a game like this comes along and just destroys that excuse. And the wildest part, this game probably cost a fraction of what big-budget Western titles do. I'd be shocked if it cost more than $100 million to make. And it's going to turn a profit fast if it keeps this level of quality. So yeah, this is a game to watch. If the final version delivers on what we're seeing here, it's going to be something special. So Sony just filed another wild patent, and this time it's for a controller that can literally heat up or cool down your hands while you play. Yeah, like imagine playing a horror game and suddenly your controller gets ice cold just to mess with you. Or, I don't know, maybe you're grinding through a long session and your hands start getting sweaty. This thing could cool them down automatically. Now, this isn't just some random one-off idea. Sony's been filing a bunch of patents lately, all focused on tweaking and reimagining their controllers. There was that Braille patent not too long ago, which aimed to make gaming more accessible for visually impaired players. And now, this. It's almost like they're quietly testing the waters for some big future controller innovation. So, what's actually in this thing? According to the patent, which was filed in August 2024 and just got published on March 6, 2025, it's got a heat transfer module built into the handles. And it's not just a simple heater or fan. It's got separate heating and cooling regions, which means it can fine-tune the temperature based on how different parts of your hands are feeling. Like, if your fingers are cold, but your palms are sweaty, it could adjust accordingly. Kinda wild, right? Now, the patent also hints at other possible uses for this tech. It mentions standalone joysticks, steering wheels, even a remote, and there's also a mention of an external module, which, if it ever happens, could mean this isn't a whole new controller, but rather an add-on that attaches to the existing Dualsense. That part's a little vague, but still, it's interesting. Of course, here's the thing. Patents don't always turn into real products. Sony files tons of them, and a lot never see the light of day. But this one feels like it fits into a bigger pattern. We've already got controllers with haptic feedback, adaptive triggers. Why wouldn't they experiment with temperature control next? So, what do you think? Would this actually be useful, or is it just one of those cool-on-paper ideas that never really takes off? If Assassin's Creed Shadows didn't give you enough historical inaccuracy for 1 year, don't worry. We've got Ghost of Yotë on the horizon, set in 1603, right at the tail end of feudal Japan. Ghost of Yotë is the follow-up to Ghost of Tsushima, and it looks like it's going full-on end of an era vibes. Expect all the classics, katanas, bows, samurai duels, but also some spicy upgrades like matchlock rifles, which honestly just sound like the devs went, yeah, what if we gave Jin Sakai a musket? What makes this interesting, though, isn't just the setting, it's the timing. PlayStation's upcoming first-party lineup is basically one giant sci-fi binge. We've got Death Stranding 2 doing supernatural weirdness with mech suits, Intergalactic from Naughty Dog going going full retro futuristic bounty hunter. Housemarque's next time loop thing on some alien planet. Marathon trying to live again. Horizon's multiplayer spin-off still quietly cooking. And even rumors of Santa Monica Studios doing a sci-fi IP on top of more God of War. So yeah, Ghost of Yotë is gonna stand out just by not having robots or glowing alien portals. A grounded samurai story in the middle of all that space stuff, it's kinda refreshing. There's really no denying it. Hogwarts Legacy hit different. Whether you're a die-hard Harry Potter fan or just someone who loves a good open-world RPG, the game made waves. It gave us what no other game in the franchise ever quite nailed. An actual, living, breathing wizarding world that felt like ours to explore. Hogwarts Castle, Hogsmeade, the surrounding highlands, every corner was dripping with detail. But even with all that magic, there's still room to go bigger. And if Hogwarts Legacy 2 really wants to raise the bar, there's one location that absolutely needs to be in the sequel. Not just as a cool place to visit, but as a full-on quest hub, the Ministry of Magic. Yeah, Hogwarts Castle and Hogsmeade handled that role just fine in the first game. But the Ministry, that's a whole different beast. It opens the door to so much more than just potion shopping and side quests about gobstones. We're talking espionage, magical politics, dark secrets, and high-stakes drama. It's the kind of place that could take the game's world from magical to absolutely electric. And look, it's not like the Ministry is some deep-cut lore thing. It's one of the most iconic places in the entire Harry Potter universe. And yet, it was completely missing from the first game. That's a huge missed opportunity, but also a perfect setup for the sequel. Timeline-wise, it works. Hogwarts Legacy is set in the late 1800s, and the Ministry of Magic was officially formed all the way back in 1707. So by the time HL2 rolls around, assuming it's set shortly after the first game, the Ministry would be a well-oiled machine, handling everything from magical law enforcement to international relations, creature regulation, and of course, making sure Muggles stay blissfully unaware. Now imagine this. You're not just walking through the Ministry for a cutscene or two, you're actively working in it, investigating crimes in the Auror office, sneaking around the Department of Mysteries, navigating shady political schemes in magical law enforcement. That's not just cool. It's the kind of gameplay expansion that would give the sequel real weight and fresh storytelling. But here's the thing. If the Ministry of Magic does show up in Hogwarts Legacy 2, it can't just be some pretty background. No half-baked blink and you'll miss it cameo. It needs to matter. It needs to be woven into the heart of the story, or at least feel like a living, breathing world of its own, where major choices and consequences unfold. Because let's be real, if there's one complaint players had about the first game, it's that the world outside Hogwarts still felt kind of limited. Sure, it was beautiful and massive, but it never fully escaped the castle's shadow. With the Ministry as a hub, Hogwarts Legacy 2 has the chance to finally spread its wings and show us a side of the wizarding world we've barely touched in games. So the big question is, will they go for it? Will the sequel take the risk, break away from safe nostalgia, and give us something deeper? If they do it right, the Ministry could be what sets Hogwarts Legacy 2 apart, not just as a great Harry Potter game, but as a standout RPG, period. Time will tell, but here's hoping they're ready to go bold. If you want to be ahead of all the gaming leaks and news, specifically PlayStation news, time for you to subscribe. And as always, a like on the video is very much appreciated.